Hey everybody, Larry Lawton here. I got a good video for you today. I'm gonna be rehashing the Whitey Bulger murder, but more importantly, what's going on with Freddie Geese, the guy who killed him. And we're gonna get into why they're screwing him. Before I get started, please check me out YouTube member programs, Patreon, Discord. Please check out our podcast, The Real Deal with me, Larry Lawton. It's doing great. Check out our merch, all that kind of stuff. My book, Gangster Redemption, going crazy, which it should. If you haven't read that book, it's a pretty wild ride. Anyway, let's get into this murder. I'm gonna recap it so you can understand where this is going. The beginning of this is, I actually got some articles from people and read some things in the Boston area. The guy Freddie Geese, who killed him in October of 2018, is still in the hole and uncharged. They don't want to charge him. The BOP says it's an investigation, and we're going to get into why that's bullshit too, and everything about the case. Now let me emphasize, Whitey Bulger, I could give a shit about him. He was 89 years old, and I'm gonna tell you what happened to him in prison. First of all, Whitey Bulger was a mobster in Boston. He was a big mobster. What we don't know, what we know now, he was a federal informant for the FBI for many, many years, like 25 years. He was also the head of the Boston Irish mob, Whitey Bulger. And he was a real killer. He killed a lot of people, made money. He was a vicious person. Well, anyway, Whitey Bulger goes on the run for 25 years. The feds tip him off that they can't protect him anymore. The state police and the DEA were going to indict him and get him indicted. And they didn't know what he was going to say. Obviously, being an informant for the FBI and all that for all those years, he's got a lot of dirt on those agents as well. Well, they tip him off, and he runs and he goes on the lam. He ends up getting caught in Santa Monica, California, 20-something years after he was on the lam. Something like that, 20-something years. He ends up getting caught with money, like near $1 million still in cash. He's under, different kind of disguise, and he's in Santa Monica. He gets caught. Okay, it's all over the news everywhere. They bring him back to Boston to face charges and everything that's going to happen to him, and he does. Obviously, the federal agents that were involved in this got in some big trouble too. I think one got indicted as well. But anyway, let me keep going on this case. So he gets indicted, he gets sentenced to federal prison. He ends up being, he's 89 years old, obviously not the greatest of health, but he goes to, one of his first prisons was Coleman II Penitentiary. He was an incorrigible guy. He was an old piece of shit. Thought he was protected. Thought everything that's going on. So the BOP doesn't like this guy, obviously. So what do? They lower his medical classification from 89 years old to where he was okay to go to another penitentiary. They send him to Hazleton in West Virginia. Well, Hazleton prison was one of the worst prisons at the time. They had 9 murders. From 2013 to 2019, the Federal Bureau of Prisons had 78 murders. Well, 9 of those 78 murders were in Hazleton. In fact, there were 2 murders in 40 days. His was the 3rd murder in 40 days at Hazleton. He gets there the night before on the 19th of February. By the 20th of February at 8:30 in the morning, he's dead. They kill him. They put him on the unit, no protective custody. They don't even give him a captain's review. And that's what made me really wonder what's going on in this prison. And was it really a set-up murder by the Bureau of Prisons? See, what happens is they let him out of the hole and they put him in a unit. And in the unit was a Boston guy who's doing life in prison, a guy named Freddie Geese, and he was doing life for a killing of a capo from I think the Genovese crime family, and he was a capo up there, and this guy, Freddie Geese, killed him. He was a hitman for the mob, and he ends up going for prison for a life sentence, him and his brother, Freddie Geese's brother, and they're in Hazleton. Now they know, obviously, he doesn't like rats. They stood up, these kids, and now they put the biggest rat in the world in the fucking prison in the same unit that this guy is in. Within the morning, 8:20, he gets out of the hole, they let him out, he gets to his cell. They have video of these 2 guys going into his cell, I guess to talk to him, whatever. They leave. In 2 hours, they kill him by beating him with a lock and a sock and shiv. And one guard described it as Whitey Bulger was unrecognizable. Gouged his eyes out. They were literally trying to cut his tongue out of him, and he was dead. He was just an unrecognizable figure. Now, this is an 89-year-old man. I think he had a wheelchair, but it doesn't mean shit. They fucking killed this guy dead right in the unit. They didn't go on the yard, didn't wait for cover. They just killed him, knowing they're gonna eventually get caught, obviously. Now, don't get me wrong, listen, Whitey Bulger deserved what happened to him. I know that's not the hard thing to say, but listen, I went away for not telling, and this guy fucking told on everybody and his mother through the FBI for 25 years. He deserved whatever happened to him. That's my opinion. Now, here's the case. The guy, Freddie Geese, who killed him, is in the hole to this day. And this happened 4 years ago. In 2018, this happened. What is so hard to investigate about this murder with the cameras and stuff? Now, what I believe is wrong, and I think the federal government killed him. And here's what I mean. He was put into a prison they knew was unsafe. They put him in a penitentiary. They knew there was people who hated him. Now, first of all, when you go to a federal Bureau of Prisons penitentiary, you have to do what they call captain's review. I did it. I was in the hole for 3 weeks in Atlanta alone, just waiting to see the captain to make sure you're safe to go on the yard. Do you know anybody in the yard? Do you have any issues with anybody? No. I go on the yard. It took 3 weeks. Well, this guy doesn't go to a captain's review. So he's getting put on the yard at one of the worst penitentiaries at the time. And of course, he's dead within 12 hours of being transferred to that prison. He's dead. Now, why don't they investigate this murder? Why isn't he put on trial? And I'm gonna give you why I believe he's not put on trial. And I don't know what's gonna happen. Does anybody give a shit about Whitey Bulger getting murdered? I don't, I really don't. Goes to show you how brutal it can get. Obviously, this guy's 89 years old and nobody gave a fuck. Freddie Geese was 51 at the time. They didn't give a flying fuck how old this guy was. This guy broke the codes in the worst way, and they sent him to the worst prison. Guys who got life sentences. Now, Freddie Geese is being now held in the hole for all of these years, and that to me is cruel and unusual punishment. No matter what Freddie Geese did, no matter what you believe of that case, he is being held in cruel and unusual punishment because the federal government is scared that a trial will bring out that the federal government pretty much killed him. They set him up and killed him, and they could be held liable. Actually, only this month or last month, the federal government dismissed a lawsuit by the Bulger family because they said a federal official can't be sued for a transfer or something of that nature. Well, that's not so true as well either. Knowing the federal law that I do, you have to do two things. If you file a federal lawsuit against the federal government, you have to prove deliberate indifference. If you can prove deliberate indifference and they knew that this could happen, they can get sued. The Bureau of Prisons can get sued. And in this case, obviously, they don't want a trial because it's going to come out that they set Whitey Bulger up to get killed in this prison. Again, do I give a shit? Here's the problem. Freddie Geese does not belong in the hole for this long. He needs to be held accountable for whatever he did. Obviously, I think he should get a ribbon, but that's here or there and how I feel about this incident. But he is being held with cruel and unusual punishment. This guy is transferred medically. He's incorrigible to the prison staff. In other words, he's one of these pain-in-the-ass old inmates thinking he has a lot of things coming. Well, the Federal Bureau of Prisons don't give a fuck what you think you have coming. They just don't give a fuck, people. And it's sad in that regard because at this point we have such a fucked up prison system that even people who are all right, made a mistake, did the wrong thing, are either getting killed or they're being held in such conditions that they really become crazy. And before you know it, you're putting a person out on the street, if he has an 8 date, that is not able to function on the street. Before you know it, he commits another crime. So my problem is with this, with what here is the federal government pretty much supported this murder. They set it up. I've seen cases in prison where I was in the hole in Atlanta and down in the holdover unit, and guards let out a bunch of inmates to get to this one guy who was no good. I don't know if he's a child molester or whatever, and they opened the doors. And of course, they got this guy and they got his eye out. And actually, little stabbed his eye out of his body. Now, he lived and he ended up suing. I don't know what happened in the case. But again, You have to prove deliberate indifference. You have to prove that they know this could happen, they saw it happen again, and they do nothing to fix the problem. It's called deliberate indifference. Once you pass that threshold in the federal court system, you can sue and you can get money and you can get stuff. They don't have the immunities if it's deliberate indifference, because that's like saying a guard can actually beat you to death. If he never did it again, he was a normal guard and he just snapped himself, you can't sue him. They have immunity for that because they didn't know it was coming. Now, if this guard was beating people up every week and they knew it and they just didn't do anything about it, that's called deliberate indifference. In fact, I won a case and helped an attorney win a case right here in the state of Florida. Again, it's immunity. It's a state case, but they have immunity. It's government officials. And what happened was they knew about rapes and assaults that were happening in this broom closet in the prison. Well, there were 7 incidents prior to this that they knew this was happening. Why don't you fix the problem? Why don't you lock the door? Why don't you put a camera there? Why don't you do something? Well, this one kid goes to prison, young kid, 21 years old. He was assaulted by a whole gang of inmates and they raped him with a broom handle. They literally, and they messed up his intestines and his inside and his bowels and his rectum, and they ripped it up. Well, this kid got pretty messed up. He was only in the prison 3 days. It was state prison. Well, the threshold we beat to get the case, which the kid ended up settling for $600,000, I think it was. We proved deliberate indifference, that they knew about an incident was happening, they never did anything about it, and then you can sue. You can get past the threshold of deliberate indifference. Once you do that, they're open game, because they have to know, they have to be responsible enough to know that this could happen. An incident, like I said, a guard beating somebody means nothing if you don't know about deliberate indifference, because you didn't know what's going to happen. They're not responsible. They're a government official. They're doing the right thing, and this guy snaps. I can't be responsible for every person who might snap in this place. You'd never get anybody to work in the facility, at a senior staff level. But once they prove deliberate indifference, that means you knew about it, you knew he was bad, let's say it's a guard, and you knew this guy was gonna do that. In this case, with the Whitey Bulger case, with the Freddie Geese case, who killed Whitey Bulger, I believe I could even prove deliberate indifference in court because of the incidents that happened. And I think the government knows that, and that's why the government says this case is under investigation. Now, why is a case already? October will be 4 years. This happened in October of 2018. What is taking 4 years to investigate a murder where you have every single person right there, you have cameras, you have guards, you have everybody in the world there? Why are they waiting? Why is the federal government not charging Freddie Geese with murder and then bringing him to trial if he wants to take a trial? Because I can guarantee you Freddie Geese already has a life sentence, says, I don't give a fuck, I'm going to trial. I want the world to know that this guy's a piece of shit and I fucking killed him. And I want the world to know that, and they will, because you have to go on trial. They're not gonna seal the case, because then that's government cover-up. The Bureau of Prisons should be held accountable for this incident, and I don't even know if it was the FBI, because the FBI was in bed with Whitey Bulger. That's proven and done. When Whitey Bulger escaped, they barely looked for the guy, and it was like a cursory look, and he evaded them, obviously for 20 years. So now Whitey Bulger was on the lam for all that time. Why? Because the federal government and the FBI were in bed with him, and they don't want the whole world to know. I'm sure they weren't even happy when he got caught. He ended up getting caught by a fugitive team that was happening, maybe knew and didn't know the whole case and didn't know the senior leadership that was there and everything that goes along with that. So, and I believe they didn't care, and they didn't want him to get caught and hope he just dies somewhere and they find him and that's the end of it. Well, he doesn't. He gets caught, and he ends up telling about the federal government. He does, Whitey Bulger. So now the federal government's got another case. Here again, the federal government, being the Bureau of Prisons, is used to kill this guy in a way that not many people could say. I mean, it's obvious in my incidents that I think this happened. Listen, the Bureau of Prisons knows you can't put two people who are either co-defendants and hate each other, one testified against the other, or whatever it was, into the same prison, no less the same unit, no less the same dorm. In prisons, you have an A house, a B house, a C house. Then they have wings of that, A1, A2, A3, A4. All of them are pretty much built the same. And sure enough, in Hazleton, these guys kill him right away, and now they are not being held accountable. Which, listen, they got life sentences. They already done all their appeals. They are what they are. And, you know, they don't care, obviously. They didn't even stick this guy yet in the ADX in Colorado, which is the most secure prison in the world. So since he's not even at the ADX in Colorado, you got to say to yourself, why? Why isn't this man transferred? Why are we having to take care of this man in Hazleton, which is a person in there feeding him, doing everything else they have to do? But he's in the hole too. You know, if you're going to put somebody in the hole and you think he's that dangerous, put him in the ADX. But since this guy is known to have killed Whitey Bulger, why aren't you charging him? It's blowing my mind. And I understand what's happening. I feel for this guy because, you know, as much as people say to me, Larry, you talk about you knew a guy, you know, your cell, he killed a man with an accident, but he's a good guy. Another guy killed this guy and he's a good guy. Well, when I say that, I mean they're a good guy to me. I knew them under better circumstances, obviously, than their incident that happened. You know, just because somebody kills someone, I know people are going to go crazy on this, and I say he's a good guy. Listen, he did what he did. I did a lot of bad things, and I consider myself a good guy. I like to try to help people. I try to make people's lives better by not doing crime or not going the direction I went. There's reasons for everybody doing what they do, and I'm not justifying anybody's crimes. I never, ever, on YouTube or anywhere else, have said that Larry, I was wrongly convicted, or I shouldn't have did the time I did. The only thing I say about the Bureau of Prisons and the criminal justice system, it's so broke that you'd see a child molester get less time than I got. I ended up getting 4 12-year sentences, and you'll see a child molester get 5 years. I can't justify that in any way, shape, or form, and I think that's bullshit. I think anybody who fucking fucks with a kid in any way should be held accountable to the highest degree possible. And I'm trying to be nice about that, because in prison, they're not held in very high regard like a Whitey Bulger wasn't. Now, Whitey Bulger also got in trouble in other prisons, so everybody hated Whitey Bulger. He wasn't a liked person in prison. Just because you're 89 doesn't give you a pass in prison. I tell that to everybody. Just because you have a disability, just because you might be slow, just because you're old, doesn't give you a pass. You know, you disrespect people, or something happens, or your crime's the wrong crime, nobody gives a fuck how old you are or how young you are. You are gonna get fucked up. That's a place where things happen, and there isn't a thing you can do about it, or the system can do about it, except protective custody. Obviously, they have that. Whitey Bulger was such a pariah with everybody. He worked both fields when he was out on the street. He was an informant for the FBI, and he was a freaking murderer, straight murderer, and they knew he was a murderer. That's what kind of gets me wrong. Just like you know, any incidents where the federal government supports a murder of any kind, it blows me away. Here we are in the United States. We go above and beyond to save a life. You'll see helicopters, you'll see rescue teams, you'll see so much stuff go out to save somebody, and as they should. But when there's a murder that nobody gives a shit about, all of a sudden, it's okay. The federal government doesn't give a shit. Well, the federal government should be held accountable, and because they're not, I have to call that out. I want you guys to look at the Whitey Bulger case. You can Google it, you can Wikipedia it, you can do whatever the fuck you do. Look at some articles. I'm gonna put a link in the description below to the Boston Globe article about this case. And what they're not really saying is how badly Freddie Geese is being held, and how wrong it is that Freddie Geese is being held in solitary confinement in the hole in Hazleton. Now, as a man who spent 3 years in the hole, not all at once, and now he has. I spent 11 straight months in the hole when I wouldn't cave into the Bureau of Prisons murder of 3 of my friends, and I said it, and I wrote an article about it, and I did everything. Well, they didn't want that either, and they tried to kill me, if you want to call it that too. Thank God I had congressmen and people who knew I was a good person, friends and family, writing letters, so they knew I had support. And that did hurt them from doing certain things to me, because they knew that they would be held accountable. Somebody would be held accountable. Well, in this case, right now, nobody is being held accountable. So right now, I'd question the warden of Hazleton, or the Bureau of Prisons director, or the regional director, and say, why is this man not investigated? You have to also go straight to the FBI and find out why they didn't investigate this murder already, and this guy's not being held. And I'm telling you why. I know the answer. It's because they don't want this stuff coming out in court. One, how bad Hazleton was. As the one article said, 9 murders. There were 2 or 3 murders in the last 40 days there. Let's throw the guy who is the biggest snitch in the system, and everybody hates him, and let's throw him on a unit with a couple other Boston hitmen. Let's just see what happens. They didn't say to do it. Let's just see what happens. They set up the situation for him to get killed. Obviously, that could be negligent homicide. That could be a lot of things that somebody can be charged with. And I think somebody should, so they can show what really goes on in prisons. They got to show that, one, there's no care for life, their own or not, or anybody's. They don't care. Obviously, I talk about prison systems all the time, especially a lot of my friends and fans overseas. And all of the prisons overseas, you know, you wouldn't see that. I'm not saying there's not bad people over there doing bad things, because there are. I know Raphael Rowe, and he does a prison show, and he got abused, and he was innocent. But it happens, obviously. So I look at this in a different light. I look at this, why isn't the federal government doing what they're doing, and the FBI? So somehow there's collaboration. There has to be collaboration with the Bureau of Prisons and the FBI. Whether it's the director talking to the director of the FBI saying, let's milk this out as many years as we can. And people will forget about it, and then somebody will die, somebody will get killed, something will happen to somebody else, and before you know it, the case is over. Because that's exactly what's happening. And Freddie Geese is not being treated fairly. He's being held in confinement, which is totally cruel and unusual punishment. And him not being, cruel and unusual punishment, the whole should not be used for this reason. The whole should not be used for this reason. I have my reservation that people say no, the whole shouldn't be used. Well, I kind of believe it should in certain incidents, at least in a short-term basis. If you have a psychotic inmate and you have to put him somewhere and you don't want him to kill somebody else, you got to put him somewhere. But then they have to make determinations and not just leave him there as a holding cell forever, because that's what they're doing right now. I want to see Freddie Geese go on trial. I want to see what Freddie Geese says about I want to see what Freddie Geese's attorney says about them setting up this murder, because I think maybe they can get him off. So let's call it what it is. It's a cover-up by the federal government, and it's a cover-up by the Bureau, or the whole federal government, which is the Bureau of Prison, the FBI. You let me know what you think, guys. I'm very adamant about these because I know the system, but I want to know what you guys think about this. Should anybody be held in the hole for 3 years like that? I don't believe so. Over 3, almost 4 now. And it's wrong. Charge them, get it done with, go to your prison you're going to go to, figure it out, and that's it. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe, put on your notifications, pass these on. Really appreciate your support. Make sure you comment, because I answer them. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll see you next time.